That's a tough question you raise, and I find it hard to say where this disease began. It really does seem to me like a kind of cancer, a tumor on human society. I would say it began when we gave up the traditional hunting and gathering way of life and made the terrible mistake of settling down to agriculture. Somebody has said that the plow may have done more damage to human life and the planet than the sword. I'd be inclined to think that might be true. That agriculture was followed by industrialism, which began only about 200 years ago, and the new way of looking at the world invented by a few European philosophers and scientists, which seemed quite thrilling and liberating at first, and it still could be, but has had this offshoot. Well, they discovered the means, the ability to achieve mastery over nature. And here we come back to human nature again, don't we? Once we discover we have this ability to push things around or push other people around, most humans do not have the self-control to refrain from using that power. Power corrupts, as some wise man said, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Science and technology are gradually giving us this absolute power over the rest of life and human life. And power not only corrupts, but it attracts the worst elements of human life. Power attracts the worst and corrupts the best. Hard to say. Humans have always wanted to achieve some sort of control of their environment. Not only we moderns, but the most ancient tribes practiced their magic and their rituals in the effort, at least, of bringing things under some control so they'd be able to predict what was going to happen, and for the perfectly honorable purpose of surviving. But somehow in the last 5,000 years, this normal, natural, healthy, wholesome desire to survive and continue human life, raise a family, and pass your genes on to succeeding generations, has been corrupted by the desire not merely to live a sane and harmonious and beautiful life, but to dominate, to achieve power. And we mentioned this before. We began by enslaving one another. The first industrial systems, really, were those of Egypt, I suppose, and Mesopotamia, and maybe ancient China, where thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions were conscripted into work gangs of one sort or another to build these huge monuments to the glory of some tyrant. The pyramids of Egypt, the Great Wall of China. Society itself became a kind of machine. As Lewis Mumford pointed out, the original great machines were made of human bodies, flesh and bone. They were slaves, human slavery. That was probably the original evil. So for thousands of years, our society has depended on the enslavement of most humans. Either simple chattel slavery like that of the blacks in America, or the slightly more subtle form of slavery of serfdom in Europe, the peasants and the lords, and the modern form of slavery we call wage slavery, chaining people to routine tasks, whether in a factory or in a store, in an office, forcing them, compelling them to perform tedious, dull, repetitious work in order to eat. And even when they're well paid and living in suburban houses with thousands of dollars worth of gadgets and a car and a pickup truck and a motorboat and so forth, most of us are still slaves to the system. We are dependent upon it. We cannot break free from it. We have to support it and work for it, or they'll cut us off and we'll starve. Slavery, a great evil. We enslaved some of our fellow beasts, the horse and the burro. We created the mule, made slaves of dogs, and then soon afterwards we learned to enslave human beings. And now our technological industrial machine is trying to enslave the whole of nature, put everything to work for human greed and power. That, I think, is the great evil of human life, modern life. By modern, I mean the last 5,000 years, when the nightmare of history began.